Okay. Well, welcome to our. We're really in the pointy end of this course, which is exciting. We've got a couple more road users to cover off. We're going to talk about the two-wheeled road users, cyclists and motorcyclists, and just so we get a feel for some of their particular needs and how we can look within our road safety audit at finding issues for these road users. Thank you to those who have started to put in their desktop 360 audit assignment. You'll get some feedback on that shortly. I did just want to, I had a quick flick through some of them just to gauge how people were going. Generally, people are finding good issues. So well done. That's a pretty important thing as a road safety auditor. Generally, people are following the formula nicely and writing the audit findings, and that's nice. Risk ratings probably a bit higher than industry would rate these risks, and you'll note I say higher than industry would rate these risks, because to say that the risk ratings are wrong is a pretty hard thing to do, because there is a degree of subjectivity to it and your judgment on it. But if we look at intersections around Victoria or around Australia, or even signalised intersections, and look at the number of deaths and serious injuries, overall it's shocking. But if you look at individual intersections, to have more than a couple of pedestrian crashes at them is very significant, and it's not regular that you would see that. So if you use that knowledge to look back at the risk ratings to understand what you're talking about, if we're seeing intolerable style risks, or very high end, where we're saying serious injury, and we're expecting it on a 6 monthly basis, I mean, we're going to see it'll be the worst intersection in Australia for pedestrian crashes by a long way within a few years, which doesn't quite ring true with the volume of pedestrians and other things like that. And you're attributing all of that risk to that particular issue that you've identified. So if you say that the crossing doesn't line up with the desire lines, and you're saying that particular thing is going to end up with 5 pedestrian serious injury or deaths over the next 3 years, or whatever it comes out if you work backwards from your risk thing, is astronomical. So yeah, just it's a little trick you can use to try to understand it, especially if you do understand how much trauma is out there on the network. Anyway, I'm happy to talk to people about that to help them calibrate their risk ratings. I think you'll get there as you audit with senior auditors, and they sort of temper different things. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. The categorization of primary and supporting, as expected, people are struggling a little bit with this. It's okay. You'll get some feedback. I suppose I'll give you an example, and I did give this earlier, but I'll do it again because now you've sort of gone through the process. And I'm just going to use this slide that I have here as a, what have I done there? Just going to use this slide as a little bit of a writing pad. Okay, so if we had an intersection of some description, let's go like that, and we've got like a bus stop here, say. And your audit concern is that a vehicle waiting to exit out of here has their sight lines blocked when there's a bus there. Good audit finding, right? So you're thinking about, okay, well, if the bus is there, it's big, it's going to block all those sight lines, and that's an issue. Okay, if we take this bus stop and we move it I don't know, way back here or something, open up the sight lines nicely, right? People want to say that that is a primary recommendation because we've removed the issue. But the way I want you to think about it is not a primary, it's a supporting. The way I want you to think about it is that's the issue, but the crash that we're worried about is that vehicle comes out and is struck by a vehicle going through there. Okay, so just remove some of this. Remove that. The question is that crash still going to happen? And is it going to be at the same severity? Okay. And the answer is yes, it can still happen. It can happen at the same severity. It's less likely to happen, absolutely, because you've opened up sight lines. But the crash at that severity is still there. Okay. What we'd have to do is think about this crash and think, what could we do to virtually eliminate that crash? Maybe a grade separation would do that. Or how can we make it so any side impact vehicle to vehicle crashes are within tolerable levels? So maybe a roundabout, maybe we have that acceleration lane out and plenty of space for that to happen. Yeah, maybe we block off the turn out and it's only left in, left out, or these sorts of things. Maybe there's a raised platform to slow vehicles on the approach to within tolerable levels. And maybe we block the whole intersection off and send them around to the signalized intersection down the road. I'm just showing that, think about it from that crash type. Are we eliminating that crash type, or are we bringing it to within those tolerable threshold limits of force and energy? And if we're doing that, then it can sort of fit into the primary. So I hope that sort of helps people a little bit, and you'll get that feedback on your assignments if you are still struggling a little bit with those. Okay, so today, cyclists, motorcyclists, and then we're piling it on at the moment in this course because it's the meaty end. We are going to give you your road safety audit to do. It is a mock audit, but it's getting pretty close to what you would actually do in a road safety audit. It's just been scaled back to make it a reasonable amount of time for you to invest in during a training course. Now, continue to pop your stuff in the chat, your questions, your comments as we go. I will ask you some questions. We don't have somebody behind the scenes looking at it, but I'm going to be looking at it periodically. I've got it ready to go, so keep your questions coming in, and we're going to talk about cyclists. So let's jump into it. I'm sure many of you are people that ride bikes, as we are told to call cyclists these days, to humanize people that ride bikes rather than this idea of cyclists. And anyway, I'll use those terms interchangeably for now, though. But so we want to identify the requirements of people that ride bikes for safe travel. We want to source technical information, and we're going to look at common road safety audit issues as we've been doing, and some basic treatments and terminology. So let's jump straight into it. Now, there are these sort of high-level principles to think about with cyclists and cyclist requirements and cyclist safety, and I've listed them there: separation, clear sight lines, space to ride, smooth surfaces. Speed maintenance is an interesting one, and I will come back and definitely I'll explain how that's a safety-related thing. But for a rider to be able to continue at a certain speed, not stopping, starting. Connectivity and information to warn, inform, guide, and the like. But we'll get into it. Really, though, we want auditors to think like cyclists and think, where am I going to ride here? Would I feel safe doing this? Would I feel safe turning here? Oh, if people open their doors, am I in that dooring zone? All of those questions. And most auditors have ridden bikes in their life at some point, so they can get a good idea of how that might feel. There are these thematic specialist audits where we call them cycling audits, where you definitely have to ride through the area, and you have to really hone in on particular issues for cyclists, and you can sometimes ignore issues for other road users because it's got that thematic audit nature of it. Now, sometimes I and the audit team will ride the route anyway, just because we think that's an interesting view. So it may not be a thematic specialist road safety audit for cyclists, but we still do that. Just remembering one that I was in the audit team for up in Bendigo, the Napier Street duplication. I certainly rode that one just to get a feel from that cyclist perspective. It's not the way that I would usually ride on that, so had a look at it and and drove it and walked parts of it as well. So you get that nice rounded feel. I didn't ride it on a motorbike, but that's a possibility as well. But what are we talking about when we talk about people that ride bikes? We've got the 8-year-old, the 80-year-old. We've got the lycra-clad training cyclists. We often refer to them as mammals. They're middle-aged men in lycra. And I'll probably have to put my hand up and confess to being a mammal. We've got like commuters. We've got cargo bikes now appearing a lot more. We've got e-bikes. I mean, it's quite a varied road user set. In fact, probably one of the most varied road user sets, in the sense that we have all of this different. But generally, what we try to think about the 8-year-old and the 80-year-old, and if you can sort of design and think of their needs, you tend to cover the bulk of the at least sort of commuter style riders. The recreational mammals, the mammals are a lot harder for us to design for and think about, but we don't ignore them. But we'll delve into that in a bit of detail. Okay, so what information do we have as road safety auditors to help us with this thinking about people that ride bikes and ensuring that their safety? Well, the good old Part 6, 2022 version, Austroads, in the prompt lists, nicely has lots of questions about people that ride bikes and people that walk, or in wheelchairs and the like. So we cover off vulnerable road users quite well in there, so lots of prompt questions. If you are asked to do a road safety audit of a shared path, there is this document, which some of you may be aware of, but it's a bit hidden away. It's a little bit dated, it's 2012, but I think it's still a really good document from that slightly different perspective of that shared path. So I'll talk to you a little bit about doing those shared path audits later on. Don't forget to count your wallies. In terms of standards and guidelines associated with cycling infrastructure, there's actually a wealth of information out there. It's really quite well documented. We continue to get more information. We've got 6A paths for walking and cycling, and in the Austroads Guide to Road Design. So it's another Part 6 to confuse us, because audit is Part 6 of the Guide to Road Safety, and this is the Guide to Road Design, and it's Part 6A. And then we've got, of course, 1742, Part 9, which is bicycle facilities. That's the Australian standard. This document, Cycling Aspects of the Austroads Guide, collected together a whole lot of different bits and pieces around cycling from different guides and different Austroads documents, and sort of consolidated into one document, which is pretty nice document. Then each jurisdiction just has heaps of stuff. We were involved in putting these ones together for Vic roads, which is treatments at roundabouts, doorings, strategic cycling corridors. This is a good one, Melbourne City, bike lane design guidelines. And then if you go broader beyond that, and the different, Queensland's got great material. New South Wales got some good stuff. And then if you go worldwide, we've got the Bible of bicycle infrastructure design, the Crow Manual, and it, if you're into this stuff, it's worth getting your hands on a copy of that because it is really pretty groundbreaking stuff. And then lots of jurisdictions coming out with different things to do audits, cycling audits, prompt lists, technical guides, and the like. And I've put a lot of these into the learning management system for you, so you can you don't have to sort of hunt them down. So you're able to have a flick through those if you want. Okay, let's get into a few common findings for people that ride bikes in terms of road safety audit findings. Now, the first one I'm going to put up here is longitudinal grades. Okay, so these are, as you see in the photo there, drainage pit grate areas where a bike wheel can fit through the gap. And we see these, unfortunately, out there on the existing road network. It's pretty rare to see one of these in a design. So if you're doing an audit of a design, it would be very, I haven't seen one in a design for 15 years. But what I do see a fair bit of as a road safety auditor is those existing on the road network and different upgrades happening, and that continuing to just remain. And that's a real one where you only discover that with your site visit when you're out there. So you're looking at the design and maybe they're, I don't know, doing some cycling infrastructure upgrades down the road or something like that. And you say, wow, okay, so we've got cyclists, we're going to get more cyclists, and they're all going to run over this longitudinal grade or through this dangerous area. So I'm going to point that out, even though it mightn't be in that specific area of the design changes or the like. Now, this one, I've been involved in a couple of expert witness cases against, well, one was against the local government, but the other was against a big shopping centre developer. And so the shopping centre one was quite interesting because the shopping centre was doing an expansion, adding a big, adding lots of stuff, but a big bike parking cage thing, and encouraging cycling from quite a prominent shared path through part of their car park to the bike parking area. But through their car park, it was just longitudinal grates, one after the other, basically in the middle of the lane where things drain in, and I don't know where they go, and water must go out somewhere in the pipes. So the thing was there that they did all of that development. They're thinking about that, and they want more bikes, and they're encouraging more bikes. It's just the route that they're taking them, has these risks. And unfortunately, somebody at night on their bike came off the path exactly as they wanted people to do towards the shopping centre, and went into one, came off seriously injured, and I think you could see that the outcome was that the developer or the shopping centre manager had some payout to do. Now, a road safety audit hopefully would have fixed that. There was no road safety audits done in that work, and in the sort of expert witness stand, I really said, well, this, when I teach the section on bike safety for the road safety audit course, it's the first example I give. It's the longitudinal grade. It's 101 for things to look out for cyclists. It's not the biggest source of death and serious injury for bikes, but it's a pretty clear one that bikes are going to not do well out of this. Another one, which I think is a good example of audit findings, again, not representing a huge portion of death or serious injury, but important audit finding. This some road upgrades, Sydney Road here, we're seeing bike lanes being painted, some threshold treatments being added. It's really bike and pedestrian safety project. So green paint, and then adding lots of bike storage boxes. So that's the area at the front where bikes can come up and they can store here in a little pack and get it out ahead when the lights change. Well, this road operates with right out and left in at the same time at the signals here. But they're planning to add this storage box here. And so, as you can imagine, that then creates an issue where we've got bikes sort of storing there and a car behind wanting to turn left and having a green arrow and the bike's just sitting there. So it becomes a really interesting one as a road safety auditor, because I sort of scratch my head and then we talk as a team about it and say, well, what do you think here? I mean, what's the risk rating of this? Because really, I mean, people are not going to miss the cyclists likely. I mean, they're right in front of them and they're, but it's just, I mean, it's just annoying and wrong, and maybe road rage will come out, but that's not really what we're auditing about. Maybe, they're going to go out and around and take more risks to get around them, and that could have issues maybe with blocked pedestrian. It becomes hard to get comfortable with your risk rating on it, but you can have a ponder of those sorts of things. Okay, time to get you having a think about it. So what I'm going to do is show a photo next, and I'm going to ask you to tell me road safety audit findings, so issues that you see that could present a risk for cyclist safety, and just type them into the chat. And I will give a prize. I'll give you a couple of prizes out here. I'm going to give a prize out to the person who can tell me what country it is when I put the slide up. And the second one is I got a couple of issues in mind that I want you to find. There's lots of things we could point out. A couple in particular, if you're the first one to pop one of those in, I'll give you a prize as well. Okay, so here we have a thing. If you know what country it is, pop it up. Oh, wow, okay. Oh, gee, they're coming in thick and fast here. Okay, Michael's got got Wales, and I'm going to give it to Wales there. So Michael, you get your prize, but let's see some issues now. I've been practicing my my Welsh. I'm pretty sure that translates to cyclist dismount. Okay, let's see what people are saying. It's good. This is good stuff. Yep. Okay. Gee, got a good group here. Lots of keen eyes for safety issue for cyclists. Okay. Keep jotting them in if you want to see other things. I'm just going to. Well, I'm going to give Luke the prize. First one to see the drainage grate. Well done, Luke. He was quick off the mark there too. A few others got in there. They're a little slower there, but I'd just been talking to you about longitudinal grates, and that one's interesting, isn't it? Because it's been placed in, correct orientation for any cyclists on the road, but not across the cycle path, which is where the cyclists are going to be. Now, these days we have a cyclist-friendly one of these that can be traversed in all directions. So you don't need to think about your orientation like that, because you just use cyclist-friendly grates. If you need to, ideally don't have that there because they can be a bit slippery in their own right. But there you go. That's a good bit of spotting. Okay, we've got challengers. People are popping in there. We've got some commentary around these tactiles, loose tactiles, and are they going to be slippery for cyclists? These are good things to think about. We've got people talking about this sightline impediment being the fence. So a rider coming up to that and a driver won't be able to see them, and the cyclist won't be able to see vehicles. And then I like the fact that David's pointed out, well, okay, so somebody's decided to put a cyclist dismount sign there. And why have they done that? Well, probably in part due to the sightline impediment and the fact that the road has priority. But David's rightly pointed out, who's going to take notice of that? Like, many of you ride bikes, which I know some of you do. When you see a cyclist dismount sign, how many times have you ever dismounted off your bike? For anything like me, I don't think I've ever done it. It's got to be one of the most ignored signs you'll ever see. And the only thing it's really there is to make the traffic engineer or the designer feel a bit more comfortable. Our job as road safety auditors is to bring people back to reality. Say, they're not going to get off their bike. You've got a fundamental issue there. And you know, that's maybe not enough. Here's a little picture of the height of stupidity on cyclist dismount signs, in my opinion. And, you know, this is where there's no point putting up those signs because you've obviously, well, it's just wasting everybody's time and money. Let's go back to this one, though. So what can we do here? I mean, we could cut the fence back, and we could, you know, work with the property owner to see if that's a possibility. Open up those sightlines a bit that way. We could give priority to the path, couldn't we? And that would help a bit. You'd still want to open up your sightlines if you did that. We could raise this so the vehicles coming in are going in slower and slowing down at this particular point. You could do that either way. You could have, you know, things back here to slow vehicles down if it wasn't priority. So, you know, lots of different sort of options and things that you could put forward to your client to consider. Lots of other, you know, ideas and options in there, and lots of good audit findings. But I'm going to keep moving on. But thank you all for your input. Sorry I didn't get to everybody's comments there. But I do want to talk about, I'll give you an example of a road safety audit we undertook. And it's got a sort of similar issue that came up, but there's a couple of reasons I want to use this as a bit of an example. So it was a post-opening road safety audit of a really big subdivision that had happened. And we were commissioned by the local council actually to do the road safety audit, and which is usually it would be the developer that commissions it, but for one reason or another, it was the council that ended up doing that. And one of the things that they'd done is this shared path, which was right up against property boundaries, which is a bit odd. But at a number of the property boundaries, we saw these high fences and the garages were just there. And so we were going to have cars backing out at that point, and we're going to have cyclists moving along through here. So that was the issue, and it was written up, and there's a picture there. Hopefully that makes it a bit clearer. And then we talked about, you know, consider measures to open sight lines. So and a photo of one of these fences to open up those sight lines. That's what we could be looking at, supporting treatment, because it doesn't eliminate the ability for a car to back out and strike a cyclist. Like, it's still there. It's just less likely to happen because sight lines are opened up. And then talking a little bit about vegetation possibly being the same issue, to keep an eye on that as well, because at some of the houses we did see some, you know, planting that we thought, well, that's just going to grow up and engulf the whole area as well. But so possible that these crashes will happen, moderate in terms of severity of injury and high risk, and then you'd put it doesn't include FSI or where it sits in the risk rating matrix because we're saying that, well, we don't think that we've got enough speed on a cyclist going along here. Maybe they're going 20 kilometers an hour. That's pretty fast on a shared path. I mean, but that's what you actually would use, cyclist 20 kilometers an hour, to work out your sight triangles for a cycle path if it had priority, like that one we had before. So if you had road coming up here and you had a cycle path with priority, well, how do you work out your sight triangles on that? Well, you use a 20 kilometer per hour speed for that. Yeah, so Michael's bringing up a good point, which is what I'm going to get to next. And well, it's actually not quite what I'm going to get to next, but it's a good point that he brings up. But what happened with this, and one of the reasons I wanted to use this as an example, is that it was given over to the local government, and they said, thank you for your road safety audit. You know, there are lots of other issues out there, and they said, yep, agree, you know, we like everything. This property access finding that you've got, we want that removed from the audit, though. We want to remove from the audit because you know, that's part of the structure plan design guide, that those are allowed on these particular properties that have this, and you know, it's out there, it's been approved, the development was approved with them, and you know, that's that. And you're in this awkward situation, aren't you? Because you've identified it as a potential issue. Your client, who you're giving the report to, you know, is demanding it to be removed from the report, which, you know, they're paying for. But it's, you know, this does come up quite often as auditing, and depending who you're doing a lot of your audits for. If you're auditing a lot for developers, you're going to find yourself in these situations a lot. And it's where you have to stick to your values and your ethics, and you are reporting an issue. You can say, well, I'm sorry, it's staying as an issue. We've tried to provide you with a few recommendations. Let's have a think about anything else that might be able to be done. But the fact that it's an issue still remains. Okay, so that's where it's an issue. So it doesn't matter if it, you know, is in guidelines, it's standard, whatever it is. If they want to write that as their comment, that's fine. If they want to say, you know, this is this, it was accepted, you know, do we accept the issue? No. Okay, closed out. That's their choice. But as us as auditors, if you've identified an issue and it's there, and they haven't provided you with information why it's not, like sometimes you'll present a finding and they will give you extra information, and you'll go, oh, okay, I didn't know that bit of information. Okay, I'm willing to adjust the finding. But if you don't believe it adjusts the fact that there's a safety issue there, you still report it. And you know, I mean, you're not making your client's life easy, but that's not our job. And it does become this weird position that you're in, where the person or the people paying your bill are demanding something, and you're not giving it to them, and yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, I haven't done any more audits for that council, but that's by and by. Anyway, let's go with surface issues. Now, don't think about surface issues just as the ability for a rider to be destabilized and come off. Think about them also as areas where if a rider sees them, they will change their riding line to avoid. And that can push them into more dangerous areas. So think about both of those risks associated with pits, grates, pit lids, and the like, and lots of different things in our road environment. Another general sort of road safety audit finding, which comes up a bit as new legs are put onto an intersection often, again, subdivisions or the like, you'll often see that your lanes through an intersection don't line up. And here's an example where, you know, if you're in this lane, well, where do you line up to? Onto the footpath. If you're in this lane, you sort of line up into the left lane, don't you? But so we're not getting things lined up. And, you know, you used to get the plans and they'd be printed out and you'd sort of be looking down the plans to see how things line up and what sort of things. Nowadays, you can sort of just draw lines in CAD or you know, with the PDF editor and those sort of things to see how things line up. But we know for this, we're going to have occasionally, we're going to have a vehicle in this lane going along here, going into that lane. And then there'll be a vehicle beside it trying to come in and we'll have a sort of side swipe crash. They're low severity. We don't like them. We don't like any of this. It's low severity stuff. Usually it's just a little bit of a bingle. But if a cyclist is coming through there as well, and it just sort of coincides with all of this happening, they're the ones that get really seriously injured because of their vulnerability. So getting that lane alignment is good. And if you can't do that, really good sort of line marking, signage, and the use of RPMs is good. What's an RPM? First, want to put that in into the chat. Can I have a prize? I'll explain what an RPM is. Okay. David gets it. Closely followed by, so it is a raised pavement marker. An RPM is a raised reflective pavement marker, but in the intersection where you're using them as guidance dots, they're just RPMs, raised pavement markers. So you got to get them in the right spot that you know brings people across, but doesn't conflict with the ones going this way. And you can try to guide through an intersection that goes wonky like this one using those, but you know it's not ideal. So if you're looking at these designs, get things lined up if we can, and it's a better way to go. Okay. Another interesting but very, very challenging spot is the point where we have an intersection stand-up lane or the like. So by stand-up lane, I mean, you know, at an intersection, we'll add a second lane sometimes to try to flush more vehicles through each phase of the signals, because they sort of, you know, you get more there, off they go, as opposed to lining well up. So stand-up lane, and then it sort of closes back in. But vehicles coming out of here are really concentrating on ensuring that they can merge at that point, aren't they? And then sometimes putting the foot down and merging, and cyclists again just getting caught up in these areas, and drivers looking over their shoulder and not really focusing on that. It's a very hard thing for us to treat. There's some ideas that you can sort of think about with cyclist head start, so giving the bikes the first run out, and they can potentially get themselves into better positions. Could be worse positions, so you got to, you know, think about that. Where there are some really good protected intersection examples where we have bike facilities sort of come off and then come back on at different points, or, and I'll show you this later, you know, pushing car parking out, having bikes run curbside eliminates that risk. But lots of things to think about, lots of different costs associated with those. So roundabouts for cyclists have been a bit of an issue for a long time, and we certainly do have research and evidence to show that cyclists are at higher risk at roundabouts. We don't actually have that evidence for pedestrians or motorcyclists. Their safety improves at roundabouts according to research. Now, pedestrians are an interesting one, and I won't go into it in detail because the studies I don't think appropriately took into account exposure. I don't think that because my gut feel is that pedestrians just don't walk through roundabouts, especially if they're old or the like, because of the difficulty in doing it, especially if it's like a double lane. You got no hope of an older person sort of navigating through these areas. So the exposure is such an altering thing. But anyway, I'm off. We're not talking about that. The old way that roundabouts were designed to try to cater for bikes was like this one, where you would push the bikes as far out as you possibly could to try to get them away from the dangerous vehicles. Okay. Now, what was discovered from this, from different research evaluations, was that two risks were increased by doing this. So the first risk was for a vehicle, using this as their opportunity to overtake, to get past this cyclist or the like, and clipping cyclists as they go through. Okay. The second one was, and this is a really interesting phenomenon if you ever want to just read fascinating human factors, behavioral psychology stuff around road safety. It's called look but fail to see. And what it is that a driver approaches a roundabout and looks out there as they should. And then they see a bike, but it takes them longer to process the fact that they have to give way to that bike. And this is why the behavioral psychologists just love this and go nuts. And it's called look but fail to see, or look but did not see. And it's a really well-researched phenomenon. And they get into all sorts of exciting, things like threat theory, this is not a threat, and exact saturation points of number of bikes out there on the network that mean people are more attuned and start looking for them. But essentially, yeah, these cars come up, they look directly at a bike, and then they run it over. And it happens quite frequently. And it's not because there's sightline impediments or anything like that. One of the things that was discovered was lane position played some role in that. And so if you can position bikes right in the middle there, it's more likely that this vehicle will stop. There's other challenges associated with that. So what Austroads has moved to is this idea of well, in Austroads, it's termed claiming the lane, getting cyclists to claim the lane. And that's sort of marked as this one. First one to tell me what that little symbol, oh, gee, it's quick. Bob has just got it in there before I even finished the question. It is a sharrow, yeah. It's a sharrow, shared arrow. It's a sort of mashing up of those two words, and it's to try to show people the area where bikes and vehicles will share the same area. Now, some interesting things when you're looking at these as a road safety auditor. I mean, first thing I look at and go, okay, well, it's been marked, and that's what Austroads is suggesting. So we've got some good, it's improved in that. Second thing I go is, am I going to send my 8-year-old to claim the lane there? No, it's not going to happen. So, okay, so where are they be? Maybe they'll be on the footpath. So maybe that's okay. This is really catering for that. And I'm still a little bit worried though that you're going to have to push out against a vehicle that's coming up there. So one thing I really like to suggest in these is to have a device to slow vehicles at this point. You can use different devices, and maybe you put a bit of spike down separation there. What that does is just provides this wonderful spot where the vehicle coming up slows just as the bike's coming through there, and it sorts out a lot of the particular merge point squeeze issues we're going to have at this point of merge. So that's a little trick, a little tip that I'll give you. The question in there around motorcycles at roundabouts. Motorcycles get a decent reduction in death and serious injury due to everybody being more alert and aware. What else can I say? I've got a I wrote a paper once on motorcycle safety at roundabouts, which lists a whole series of factors of things you can do to make it even better. They don't get as much benefit as cars, but they are subject to the look but fail to see phenomenon as well. The riding position of the riders is better, and yeah, you want to think about things like frangible signage and different things as well. I'll keep going. We are going to talk about motorcycles in a lot more detail, but we won't cover motorcycles at roundabouts in particular. But happy to share that paper with anybody. Two-lane roundabouts, just hugely challenging for having cyclists navigate through a two-lane roundabout. Trying to turn right as a cyclist, where you're either going to have to battle your way across to there, or you sort of come in and then you're going across there, and then you're subject to the possible vehicles going through there and the like. So it becomes really challenging from what we can do. So there are people thinking about how to do this. These are some mock designs. This one has not been built. The idea is if we can provide that extra circulating area for cyclists and provide them that ability to get out of the circulating carriageway, so cyclists can get out here, maybe even have priority across this one. That's pretty cool. And then they get to a point and it's good, squared up so they can see, and they're able to then cross at a staggered way. That, or if like the Netherlands wouldn't even dream of possibly making cyclists compete, that'd go straight underneath. And the cyclists would get a free, actually the cyclists would get a free run at grade, nice and flat for the cyclists. They'd make the cars go up, and they'd just design it so the cars have to go up and down, because they say, well, surely the one pedaling with their own power can have the flat run, and those going up and down. So cyclists have priority at all intersections. Cars must stop. Oh, yeah, this is in the Netherlands. Yeah, sorry, I was going to say there. Yeah, they get a much better run in the Netherlands. But we're starting to see now more of the Dutch-style roundabouts in Australia, and there's certainly a number planned and more. And this one has been built. So this is the artistic impression of it down at Moray Street. But it works really well on these single lane roundabouts. You can see there. So the idea, if you want to turn right as a bike rider, you sort of get off here and you come in here, and then you go around and then you go out and off you go. And there's a picture of it actually built. And we did an evaluation of this, working incredibly well. It wasn't a crash-based evaluation because you really can't do that with any statistical significance on just one intersection and one treatment. I mean, well, anybody sort of laws of basic statistics tell you you can't do that. But what you can do is analyze, near misses, patterns of behaviour, and get a feel for how things operate. And this one operates extremely well. We have over 75% of cyclists using the actual facility that's been created for them to make their turns. Yeah, okay, there's still a few that, and definitely the mammals that use the roundabout as they previously would. The raised platform slowing vehicles, really impressive, and things working really, really quite well. Nice, interesting design in terms of you can sort of store one vehicle there, so your roundabout still sort of can have some movement going around while the vehicle waits for the cyclists and pedestrians crossing. There is no doubt, though, that this reduces capacity for vehicles and level of service for vehicles. And I say, well, fair credit to the local government here, who just said, yeah, well, people should ride their bike or walk. They're just like unapologetic about They go, this is one of our major cycle routes. It's high pedestrian area. Why would we encourage cars to be going through here fast? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And you know, and stuck to their guns, which is it's rare, but it's great, and it works well. And then everybody calms down, and everybody continues on. Another interesting one, and I think, again, as a road safety auditor, if you're looking at these, you got to put yourself in the shoes of different riders, or in the saddle, I suppose I should say, of different riders and different ways that they might think about it. Here we've got this, there's lots of interesting things in this design, but this little bit is of particular interest. And the idea is that a rider wanting to do a right turn would sort of come in and they would pause there, and they've got this little area. One of our designers calls it the mammal pouch, for, you know, somebody to pause and then decide when to go. There's aspects of it I like. There's aspects of it that I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with sort of where it sits and the proximity to the left turning vehicles through here, and if larger vehicles sort of tracked through there and came around and they're paused there, and what if there's more than, you know, how many cyclists could you actually store there before they're storing out into the lane? And yeah, and Michael's asked a good question. Why not on the why not on the other legs? Well, these are the dominant turn moves in this site, but you know, that's there. Yeah, these are good questions to ask. So a question coming in around signs and poles within cyclists' clear zones, or you know, just areas close to the roadside, I suppose. And I think that that's a really wonderful thing to think about, because it is a danger. And you know, while we call a lot of those posts and poles frangible, they're not frangible for vulnerable road users, motorcyclists or cyclists. They're vulnerable. They're frangible for cars. They will break away if a car hits them, but certainly not a cyclist or a motorcyclist. So they do present a run-off road hazard. So something you may decide to point out, and we don't want to. And you know, you could remove them. You can consolidate redundant signage. You can look at cyclist-friendly signage. There is stuff available, motorcyclist-friendly signage. I'll just quickly jump onto a few things, and I do want to give you a chance for a stretch bake, but I've got a fair bit to cover here. So this is an interesting one. Again, if you know, doing the road safety audit of it, you can often, well, you look at this and you say, okay, so cyclists come up here and then they're given their own facility through here. That's pretty cool. So they're sort of separated away, at least going straight. You think, you know, that's quite nice. Then, you know, maybe in the post-opening audit, you're out there and you're looking at it and you go, well, okay, they built it, but is it obvious that, you know, that's where a cyclist is meant to go? I mean, that's purpose built for bike riders, basically, as part of this roundabout. It's not a footpath. However, a cyclist sort of coming up here, what would you think? I would sort of naturally go, oh, well, I'm going to now battle it out with the trucks and the you know, high-speed trucks and cars in the roundabout. They can't go up on the footpath because that, and you know, okay, they've got a little, you know, cyclist only sign, and is that going to be good enough? Well, so these are the kind of things you might pick up, and you know, this was where I think an interesting one would be to just do a little bit of green paint through like that. Now, that's not the traditional use of green paint on our network. Green paint is used for conflict points where a car can hit a cyclist in that direct conflict point to warn the drivers that there could be a cyclist coming. But green paint has started to be used more and more as a guiding device to try to get cyclists to go in areas like. So this one's just from down on Yarra Boulevard there, you know, and the classic example. I mean, that's not a car cyclist conflict point. That's just trying to get them to use the underpass under Chandler Highway there, rather than go over the road. So dooring. Dooring's a term that's really unfortunately raised its head in the last couple of decade or so. Is the idea of people opening their doors in front of cyclists, and I mean, it's been happening for a long time. We've got perm dooring. Bulk of the high-level injuries and deaths occur actually as a secondary crash, where the cyclist is into live traffic lane as a result of hitting the door, clipping, and that's where we've seen the deaths occur and the like. There are definitely injuries and some serious stuff with the cyclist actually hitting the door, but a really challenging thing for us to address in a lot of road environments, and it takes a significant alteration often for this to happen, especially hard on roads like Sydney Road, for example, where the parking lane is not a permanent parking lane. Sometimes that's a running lane. So, if you did too much, even minor stuff like painting, cyclist stuff, here, and part of the day, that's the middle of a lane. So it's not going to be a good thing as well. So you've got to think about how the road's operating all these different times. When you do have permanent parking, these options are there. However, you're still right in that dooring zone. There was a high-profile death that happened right at this spot, associated with a young guy riding and door opening, and then being run over by a truck right at this pretty much where that cyclist is. So we're not really sort of addressing that, but when we get to the Copenhagen style lanes, we're really doing a wonderful job at alleviating that particular issue. So as long as we've got sort of the space there for the doors to not significantly impose into the cyclist area, we've got a free run for cyclists. It works really well. If you're auditing these, some things to have a think about though are the entry points here and sight lines for people entering. I like to suggest, and a few people have taken this on, which is good, is like bluestones, cobblestones, surface changes, raised things in these areas where the vehicles are turning in. So as they turn in, they really have to slow at that point, which gives that nice ability for the riders to see them coming in, for them to see riders. Obviously, you want to think about how many car parks you have in those sight lines as well. Lots of other little bits and pieces, but I think there are a couple of good ones. And I talked about the idea of a shared path having priority across a road, and it's certainly done. Here's an example, but I'll put the right sign on it because we've had a bit of signage updating on what you should use there. So the idea of this, though, is that this becomes an intersection, just like a normal road intersection, where the path has the priority, and they work quite well. And you can see one there. What is the sign number for that? I do not know. I know the person who asked, though, a guy called Viseth, and if shoot me an email, I will track that down. But, we've got a little snippet on this, and we show some video footage of people going through them and from both views, and it's they work quite well. As I mentioned, determining sight lines on it, use the rider speed there of 20, and I can talk you through that. So that's what the bike rider sees. And one little tip again, though, is if you're auditing a crossing like this, right up to the next crossing and the one behind you, and just see how they are they the same? Is it confusing? Because this one's I've got a particular interest in, is that you go through a number of these with cyclist priority, and then you get to one and it's the opposite way around. And there's just some subtle clues that really draw you into feeling you have priority. So it's actually, this is contributing in my mind to a risk at the next, at one of the next crossing points, which I would note that in an audit. Whether or not I'd have it as its own line item issue or whether I'd have it as just a note, I'm not sure. And I think squeeze points are interesting, and different local area traffic management will often squeeze people down in a local area traffic management scenario to reduce speed, whether that's a chicane, a one-way slow point like this one, or the like. If you're doing that, you're going to squeeze cyclists in there as well. And again, we can have those issues. But I love these designs where a really elegant idea to give cyclists bypass lanes through there. So the cyclist doesn't have to get caught up in this one-way slow point where vehicles are sort of, they work quite well. You don't need to tell them what to do. You just let them work it out themselves, because they come in and they go slow. And if there's another vehicle, they slow, they're just going to give way. And yeah, really good treatment, and providing that path through. Okay, so I talked to you about the shared path audit guidelines, and really for a shared path audit, you're going to ride the route. Here's an example of me doing it. Pop a dash cam on your bike. I take the electronic level or out there and to measure grades of ramp grades and heights and those sort of things. But we're thinking about lots of different things. There's a list of a few different things for you to have a think about. Intersections, some just standard principles around intersections, which are pretty good principles for for normal intersections as well. Clear priorities, good sight lines, advanced warning, sign guidance, 90 degrees if you can, to open up easier sight line, or sight distance checks, and reduce speed. So I suppose here's an example. One's a little bit confusing, and depending on how many path users you've got, it just could be a little bit strange. Here's another one where I think it's actually it's confusing. Priority actually would be for that, but it really doesn't kind of look like that as to how it would work. So you're able to do that. Drop-offs. Yeah, so you got to think about the fact that shared paths often have dogs and kids and all sorts of different bits and pieces. So if we're having cyclists going along at a bit of speed, there's we're thinking about not just what's on the path, but what's sort of just off the path as well. Drop-offs. I suppose actually I might as well mention this while I'm at it. This is another little just tip. When we're doing these and a lot of general audits, I often use this app, and there's heaps of them available, but they geotag your photo, which I think all photos are geotagged anyway on your phones these days, but it tells you exactly where it is, where you are facing. You can put a quick note while you're out there to remind yourself, tells you when it was and where it was taken. And then take these shared path audits, which doing, big lengths there with a colleague, and you're able to just get all your hundreds of photos and just, hit map, and it just goes crushing and just lines them up to where all the issues were. And then it's sort of kind of easier to sort through them, and you take that issue and plonk it in as a finding, and off you go. So that one's called Context Cam, and there's one Solo Locate or Solo Geo Reference or something. So, anyway, as I say, probably there's hundreds of them available, no doubt. But something to make your life easier. Solocator is another one. Anyway, hazards near the path, as it's sort of within the path, and thinking about, are they retroreflective, how they look at night. Often, these paths are in flood-prone areas, so debris and the like. Thinking about fences. So catching not foot pegs, pedals, handlebars, So we want to use particular cyclist-friendly fences, and there are lots of good guidance and standard documents on that for what those fences are and how they should look. So there's an example. Have a think about the back of guardrail systems. So this is a new job, and great credit to the design team for thinking about vehicles leaving the road and possibly hitting cyclists and vulnerable road users, and so they protected using this guard fence. But the back of those posts become a significant issue for cyclists and possibly pedestrians as well. So something to have a think about as an auditor, and you can suggest backing rails on it, so back-to-back systems or post caps and different other things. And thinking about hazards in the path. We don't like to do this anymore. There's different ways to sort of try to lessen the ability for people to go in and hoon around in there. This one's going to be particularly bad. Somebody's, I reckon, tied a bag to that to try and warn other cyclists at night that they're about to get clotheslined by the chain. So having a think about that. I think this is a good example here as it comes up. I think they've done well here in terms of flexible bollards. So they flex at the base, really clear, delineated, the cable stay, good line marking, retroreflective stuff. I mean, ideally, they wouldn't put a cable stay in the middle of a shared path, but sometimes this is unavoidable for reasons, and I think it's a good example. But I've given you a so we did these fact sheets on different thematic audits, so cycling, pedestrian, motorcycle, and we've put them into your learning management system, so not your USB, your learning management system. And so you can have a look at that, flick through. It just gives you some tips and hints on if you're doing that specific thematic audit, that how you would think about things a little bit differently. I won't do the quiz because we're going to give you a little break instead. Any questions come in here? Can you do that straight into Google Earth? I assume that's the photos. Yeah, they'll drop straight into Google Earth and they'll just map exactly where you took the photo. I think that works with pretty much any iPhone or any Android phone geotagged photo. The only advantage of that app was it gets annotated with different bits and pieces, so you can remember exactly what you were thinking about or what you measured. Okay, 2-minute quick break. Have a quick break, fill up your water. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay. going to get back into it, and we're going to talk about motorcyclists, road safety auditing, and now thinking about motorcyclists. And again, like the other road users, it's just going to be a lot. We're really just going to scratch the surface here, and there's a heap we're not going to cover. I know Sean, who's in this group, will be very annoyed at how little we actually cover. He's a motorcycle safety expert, and does some great motorcycle safety stuff. And so he'll be chomping at the bit to add thousands of things on here. But nonetheless, we're going to just cover it so everybody's at least thinking about motorcyclists as part of our road user mix. Okay. So like the cyclist one, we're going to talk about what requirements we have for motorcyclists for safe travel, some technical information, common audit issues, and basic treatments and terminology. So there's lots of sort of different analysis of this, but motorcyclists are highly overrepresented in trauma. One of the studies sort of talking about 20 to 30 times more likely to be killed or seriously injured compared to the same travel in a car. And that's for a variety of reasons. But in the end, what we need to say to ourselves is that we license and register motorcycles and motorcyclists. Thus, they are a legitimate road user, right? And as a result of that, we have a duty of care to do what we practically can do to improve their safety. So we can't just sweep this under a rug from a road design, engineering, road management perspective. We need to look at this and say, well, what can we do? And we're duty of care bound to do stuff. And so in that sort of way of thinking, the Victorian government quite a long time ago came up with the Making Roads Motorcycle Friendly package. And it was a world first sort of way of thinking about, well, what can we do to the infrastructure and the road design that helps improve motorcycle safety specifically? What are the different characteristics? So the Victorian guide is there. It's just been released, an updated one, and it's been taken on by different jurisdictions. It's a question, how many Wallies are there? Wow. Every time you see a Wally, you've got to count it. So if there's more than one on a screen, I would count that as two. Good questions, though, about Wally. Okay, my 5 little S's of motorcycle safety when you're auditing and thinking about riders. Sight, surface, signs, strike, and speed. Can the rider be seen, and can the rider see what's coming up? Is the surface appropriate? Are there signs to warn, inform, and guide? What happens when the rider crashes or when something crashes into the rider? That's the strike. And what speed is all of this happening at? So when we think about risk, we've been doing this, we are thinking about likelihood times consequence, and that's your risk matrix, isn't it? And you're getting good at that now. When we think about those 5 S's, so being able to see the rider, the surface, and the signs, they're the likelihood of crash. I mean, if we can improve those, there's less chance of a crash happening. The strike is about the consequence of the crash, how bad it's going to be. And the speed, well, it actually can alter the chance of a crash and the consequence of a crash. So it's a double multiplier there. So let's just jump through these very briefly, touch on each one, and then point you at some other stuff. Of course, motorcyclists are much smaller than even small cars in terms of the width, so they can be hidden behind things. Here's a little photo just showing you how small a sign can hide most of a motorcyclist. So you could think then that different poles and posts and trees and the like would definitely be sightline impediments, which we might not consider as sightline impediments when we're thinking about that. Even the where vehicles we're going to prop and that dynamic visual obstruction can be something that, as a road safety auditor, if you're looking at a design, you think, well, okay, not just what's physically there or going to physically be there, but how are those dynamic visual obstructions going to occur? Where are vehicles going to pause? Can we see riders? And providing that sight line for a rider at what's coming up ahead. And if we can't do that, we really need to be very good with our signage so the riders are aware of what's coming up. Prize, if you can tell me the official name for a curve that does this, that sort of tightens up on you. So it's so some people might call it a double radius curve. So you've got one radius there and you've got one radius there. It tightens up. No, nobody's quite got it. We've got a few ideas. There it is. Michael got in there with a compound curve. Thank you. That's its official name. Lots of other names that would certainly do in a pinch. Not sure a wonky curve in an audit report would be great, but I do like it. I'm just writing Michael's name down there for another prize. Yeah, compound curve. Now, I mean, that's these issues that these curves can. Oh, sorry, stop sharing accidentally. These curves are particularly bad for motorcycles. Not great for cars, but cars tend to have that sort of luxury to lose traction a little bit and correct and carry on. If a motorcyclist comes into here and has set their line and speed to a degree, and they'll be very influenced by what they can see. So yes, we might have given some advanced warning, some speed advice, but they can see a curve and they can see how it goes, and that's a big factor in how they consider it. And then it tightens up on them, and they're in a lot of trouble there. So these curve tighten signs are actually highly effective for compound curves, and really, I think, should be part of your arsenal to combat, run-off road issues where there are these. So putting those into your audit reports, I think, is a good one. Here's an actual example where we see a 252 radius curve going into a 117 radius curve. So tightening up, unsealed road. So we're going to get some gravel wash onto the sealed surface, and 4 motorcycle runoff road crashes at that location. So just shows those sort of combination of risk factors playing in there. Now, here's another one that we see a fair bit. So we've got vehicle 1 turning and strike, and vehicle 2 coming through and striking. Which do you think is more likely, is more often the motorcyclist? Not to say that the motorcyclist could be either, but which do you think, 1 or 2, would be more likely the motorcyclist? Seeing lots of 2s coming in, and 2 is correct. That's right. So the driver sort of going there, and it's just that the motorcyclist is more hidden behind the vehicles, harder to see coming along, and we see that crash. Now, what can we do about it? And I use this example in the Making Roads Motorcycle Friendly courses and the like. Well, lots of options. You can link your signals to whatever signals are up here, and you could have something there to stop the motorcyclist. You could bring your hold line back a bit. I mean, this is a massive keep clear. I don't know why I use this example. But that would open up sight lines for both the vehicle turning and the motorcyclists coming through. You could look to close it off if that's a possibility. You could you could raise the area. So lots of different possibilities. Actually, there's a photo of that actual one. So you'd see there the Pajero. And you've got a truck there. There's no way that Pajero would see a motorcyclist, coming through on the other side. And I'm sure many of you have encountered this situation. If you do crash analysis, I'm sure many of you will have seen that involve, it involves bicycle riders and cars as well. So it's a dynamic visual obstruction challenge. We talked about motorcyclists being hidden behind different Sightline impediments. There you go. There's another one. The surface, some sort of basic physics for you here, but riders lean as they take a curve. Center of gravity then out there, so any traction issues, and we see a lot of challenges for riders. What was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, the motorcyclists we often call the canary in the coal mine when it comes to road surface issues, the first to be killed, and we want to think about that through the curves and on the approach to curves where braking's happening or leaning. I got told by Duncan McRae to fix this diagram. It's a bit not great writing lines, which is a fair comment. So I should fix that. Sean, you can draw me a new one. But we want these good traction surfaces and good consistency. But we do see depressions in the road, which can make a rider sort of bounce and lose traction and the like. And lots of different pictures now of just roads in poor condition, which are not going to be good for riders. Bob's asked a question, which I'm going to come to right at the end, because I do have a picture of an advisory speed sign and talk to that. Thinking roadworks where we're seeing gravel washed onto the road, mud, debris, and the like, and it can be slippery for riders. We're seeing a lot of scooter riders now in the city and a lot of challenges around that. So thinking about this at roadworks as well. Thinking about patching and the existing conditions, and where our patches, we often patch the road and the join is right in the rider's path, and it's probably going to be the first area that's going to break up and open up. So if we can do full width patching, we're in a better position there. And pre-warning of things. So this one is on a popular motorcycle route up in Yarra Ranges, and a rider, if they coming around here, is fairly locked into their line and their speed, and if they encounter that unexpectedly, really it's sort of pull the bike upright and go through it, or go to the outside of it. The idea of being able to go to the inside of it and so we're going to see some big issues. So any issue like this needs to be really well advanced sign until it's fixed. Ideally, we know we do better patching, so we don't have advanced warning. And Michael's popped in there manhole covers, and there's a sort of example of the temporary steel plate, the big steel plate. And when that gets a bit wet, very slippery, and riders certainly will not find that good at all, nor will cyclists for that matter, or even pedestrians if it's in a pedestrian walking area. You might think, oh, it's obvious, but if a rider's following behind a car or a truck, or it's at night, it's a bit of rain and things, it can be a surprise to a rider. So you can get, ideally we don't have these in the road environment. If they are, we can look at sort of high skid resistant surfacing, kind of like skateboard grip tape, essentially, and colouring them helps out a bit as well. Try and bulk them down properly doing that. But if you're looking at designs and say it's a roundabout or any new design, and if you're noticing services and their covers in the areas where people will be travelling, think about motorcyclists and cyclists, and ideally in these design points we're getting those out of the travel lanes. And in terms of surface skid resistance and the like, we can certainly improve skid resistance with water blasting, high skid resistant surfacing, lots of options in there to improve the surface. And ideally sealing up to barriers and sealing all the way out helps, because if a rider hits an unsealed surface, they really have to pull the bike upright or they'll lose control. And I'll get on to barrier systems there in a little bit more shortly. Just let me cover curbing. So different curbs we need for different, drainage purposes and the like. Barrier curbs certainly present the most risk to riders. They hit those that come off. But it's surprising how sort of small a lip can destabilize a rider. Here's a little video to show you that. It's there's a few factors involved. Actually, I better mute this. It's a bit colorful. So here you can see a small lip there destabilizing a rider, and they crash into the grab rail, as it's called. Now, I mean, auditing that roundabout, if I was doing it, I think it's actually pretty good. They've done a really good job. They actually highlighted that point, and things are pretty good. I think it's an interesting example to show you that frangible pole really didn't budge. I mean, it ripped it out of the ground in that certain way. If it was just the rider's body, they'd be in a lot of trouble. I showed that when I was in New Zealand doing some motorcycle work, and they said, "Hey, bro, come and have a look at our grab rails. We use PVC piping, and it just breaks away." I was like, "Oh, I like the innovation. Not sure how it would hold up to the sunlight and things like that." But anyway, there's interesting ideas. I just put it in there for fun. But you will, if you get into road safety auditing a lot, you'll see designs where people want to paint a lot of stuff on the road, and in some areas it's very low risk, but in some areas you got to think about motorcyclists braking, leaning, it getting wet, getting polished up. So line markers always tell you that the thermoplastic line marking has just as good skid resistance and the like. And maybe when it's first put down, it might be true, but then over time it just polishes up and it becomes quite a slippery surface. So watch out for that. There are motorcycle specific signs, warning signs that grab the attention of the rider, and then this is one of them, and you'd use that at issues that are particularly for motorcyclists. You may consider as an auditor, proposing one of these if it's particularly something for motorcyclists that you're worried about. A general warning sign and signs to inform and guide and the like, really important. So here's a bit of work I got a graduate to do ages ago. Look at where riders are going on curves when they crash, and the bulk are going to the outside of the curve. No prizes given away for that. That's just sort of basic physics. I mean, cars, there's more to the inside of the curve. It's skewed more. I mean, it's still more to the outside of the curve, but they can come to the inside of the curve as well because of overcorrection and the like, which riders don't get as much of that. So we're particularly interested in the outside of curves on popular motorcycle routes like this one, and here's one, where we're seeing a bit of surface issues, a curve, and then we've got these sort of concrete blocks out there, which are certainly not going to be a friendly thing for a rider to hit, or really a car for that matter. But even the galvanized steel posts present a risk for motorcyclists. We talked about that already for cyclists. These are not, all of these posts we're seeing, they're not, those ones are, the posts are not frangible for motorcycles. They are for cars. So, all of these standard galvanized steel posts, they'll just flatten if a car hits them. Power pole will not flatten if a car hits it, but not for a motorcyclist. And so, like this one in particular is of interest, isn't it? If a car pulls out here, but maybe as an auditor you go, oh, that's kind of going to block sight distance, this sign, isn't it? What's it doing there anyway? Fair question to ask. But if they have a quick look and they haven't seen that, then the rider's here and they pull out, the rider has, avoids and goes onto here. Well, they're hitting the pole, the knife face at the end of the sign, do we need both of these, one there and one there? Could we consolidate that into the middle? Do we need them at all? Or could we use the different sort of low mount flexible signage range available, which is an option. I'm going to have to jump through just because I need to give myself enough time to explain the assignment to you, but I do welcome any questions or comments. Motorcycle, we talked about leaning, so you've got to think about that lean and keeping some envelopes clear. This sort of bit of fencing, a bit close there, a rider leaning could hit that. I think a truck will probably take that one out well before a motorcyclist hits it, but think about that. There's a staged photo there of a rider leaning in over an area just to show that. There's something to think about as well. But barriers are a device that we use to protect road users from roadside objects, hazards, like trees or power poles or culverts or drop-offs or the like. And barriers are specifically designed and tested for cars and trucks occasionally, but certainly not designed for motorcyclists from their original get-go. So there's been a lot of interest in motorcyclists and barrier systems and how they interact and what happens. And Transport, well, not Transport for New South Wales, the University of New South Wales, funded a lot by Transport for New South Wales, but also other jurisdictions have been doing lots and lots of research into motorcyclist crashes with barrier systems, and you know, a decade worth of different studies and things coming out of there, which other research organisations get on it. But I'm particularly interested in what comes out of there because they've taken a lot of real world data and had a look at it. And what they found, and boiling a heap of research down into a sentence here, half the riders are off the bike and sliding when they hit a barrier system, and the other half are on the bike still and trying to keep control, and they hit the barrier system and go over the top. They don't run along the system the way that cars do. So there's taking that into account. We have already had somebody mention the idea of a rub rail, or I would term it underrun protection, because rub rail is a particular type that's public domain system. It means nobody has a patent on rub rail, so you could technically go and manufacture your own rub rail. But there are quite a number of proprietary underrun protection systems now available where you can't make them because you'll be sued. But there's some really great other systems out there as well. So I just generally term it all underrun protection. So you can do that. And hopefully, I mean, you can logically see the road safety advantage for a rider if they're sliding at 60 kilometers an hour or something along the ground. Hitting one of those posts is very feasibly a fatal incident, or definitely serious injuries. If we're able to put that there and they're able to hit that and run along it, it's going to be more minor injuries and within sort of survivable stuff. So as an auditor, if you're doing existing routes or involved in motorcycle audits, you're certainly looking at the addition of underrun protection to existing rub rail, and if it's new systems and it's a popular motorcycle area, or it's an area you just feel has motorcycle risk outside a curve or something like that, you might be suggesting need underrun protection, which can be retrofitted to the existing systems. Now, this is all, I mean, there's a European crash test for motorcycles and barrier systems. It's a Spanish one, so it's the European one, and it's motorcyclists. You slide a motorcycle dummy at, or it's a normal dummy, but you just done a couple of minor modifications to it. You slide it at 60 kilometers per hour at the post at a 25-degree angle, and then between the posts. And this is testing different underarm protection devices. So here's at the post, and you can see it. It destroys that, well, $300,000 dummy, but that's okay. You can see that one where it redirects the energy, absorbs some of it, and that passes. Okay, so it's not going to be friendly, but it's certainly within tolerable limits of sort of higher level serious injuries for riders. Now, why have we not put it on this bit? Anybody got any ideas there? I mean, there's posts there. That looks like a danger to a rider. Rider could be coming around there, could, hit there. And Michael has popped it in there beautifully. That this is the end terminal of the system, the barrier system. And this is a very specifically engineered and designed thing to collapse on itself. And nobody's ever tested one of these with the underrun protection bolted to it. The manufacturers haven't gone through the extensive testing process required to see how that would work. So we just don't know. And then the fear is, as a number of you are pointing out there, that a car hitting this could potentially be speared, or it wouldn't function in the way it should because of what's connected to that. So we want to keep an eye out for that as auditors if they are connecting things to the end terminals there. And wire rope systems. I mean, wire rope systems have copped the brunt of motorcycle anger about barrier systems from segments of the motorcycle community. It doesn't deserve the amount of attention it gets because it's such a tiny portion of motorcycle trauma associated with wire rope systems. It's so minuscule, but it does. The images it conjures up are pretty graphic, and really sort of one of the things I completely sympathize with is the fact that we don't have any good retrofit systems to make these friendlier for motorcyclists. Like the best there is stack cushion or some sort of essentially goalpost padding that goes around the posts. Now, this, like, just basic common sense will tell you this cannot be as effective as a redirection device. I mean, we're trying to absorb the energy in this very instantaneous thing rather than running along and washing energy off over all of that distance. So nobody's tested one of these in any official capacity, and it's because they're just not going to pass. And so this used to be the best you could do back in the day when you had a choice between W-beam, like a type B W-beam, or a G4 system, which is not the best for cars. Like, it doesn't have great flexibility. It's not the best road safety, versus a wire rope system, which is highly flexible, wonderful safety device for cars, right? They were our options. So you'd be like doing everything you can to get a wire rope system in for the bulk of road users that are leaving the road and hitting these. Nowadays, we have flexible W-beam systems, and I'm getting into barrier specifics, but we have these flexible W-beam systems which perform amazingly well. So opting for those, if you were ever thinking about putting wire rope in with stack cushions, you've chosen the wrong barrier system. These days, you just do a flexible W-beam with underrun protection every time. So looking at like this job, for example, which is the South Gippsland Highway, which has a high number of motorcycle crashes, and everybody except for Sean can answer this. why do you think the South Gippsland Highway has high motorcycle crashes, and why the road safety auditor, when they were putting their central barrier system down there, suggested motorcycle protection devices? Anybody got an idea? Bob's on. Oh, good. Yeah, okay. They're coming in thick and fast. So I'm going to give that one to. I will give that one to Ken, actually, because I've given Bob and Michael one already today, and Ken was just behind. Maybe the internet's lagging at Ken's place. Phillip Island, way down to Phillip Island. So there's lots of motorcycles going down there to view, and and so we see this motorcycle problem. So the auditors are conscious of that, and they say, well, we're going to put this with what can we do for motorcycle safety, and went with the stack cushions. If it was happening now, there's no way the designers would use that system. They would just go back to back easy guard with underarm protection or something like that. It would every time, and it'd be far better safety. I'm going to keep ticking along here. Some pictures of other parts of South Gippsland Highway. Okay, little post-opening tip: if you're auditing and they've put underrun protection on existing ones, just be aware that it's a lot easier for the installers to just connect it to the post than use the bracket that's meant to sit out here where they put it on. So we saw a lot of that happening. So check your design, check the standard drawings, make sure they've installed it correctly, because we got sort of sharp bits there, and we've got gaps, and gaps are not going to be good because arms and legs can get in that gap at speed, and you could imagine the challenges associated with that. And just thinking logically about that, arms, legs, where riders are going to be sliding and running into, and you're particularly interested in this on these popular motorcycle areas and the like. A bit of fill there would have been good, and a little bit of thinking around not running riders into a concrete block, and that whole bridge connection could be reworked for other reasons. And speed, highly important for riders, for other road users. In fact, it's sort of one of the, if not the most powerful thing we've got in road safety, is to manage speed appropriately, and we can do that in a whole variety of ways, and it's not just the speed limit; it's a whole sorts of things. And the use of advisory signs like chevron advisement cams, chevron advisory markers around curves can significantly help. Now, do be aware though that these are now a strike hazard, aren't they? Each one of these for riders. We're working with Swinburne Uni and the Victorian government on some designs of trying to get these to be motorcycle friendly, which is a surprisingly tough engineering challenge considering wind loads and torque and a few other things. But anyway, it's good fun. So those sorts of things. Advisory speeds and are these relevant for motorcyclists was a question in there. Well, the answer is that's not the point. So the point is that we provide consistent advisory speeds throughout a route, and if riders want to go above that, that's for them to know what the curve radius is and what the approach speed would be and the like. So this is about consistency, and what we want to make sure is that if we do have a curve that warrants a 35 advisory sign, that it's got that, and it's not got a 55 or a 10 or sorry, a 15, because you always end your advisories with 5. There's another little bit of random knowledge for you. If you've got an advisory speed, end it in a 5, and if it's a speed limit, end it in a 0. So consistency is our key, and for me, I don't care whether riders double whatever we put out there, but as long as they consistently know what's coming up. they are, you know, in the actual base of them and who they're developed for, they're not really done for motorcyclists at all. Yeah, so the question came in from Harry, is the department looking at collapsible cams to reduce the injury with traditional cams? Yes, the department is doing that with us and Swinburne materials testing lab and materials lab, and we're all working very hard on different ways to add devices. So happy to chat to anybody about that. Motorcycle audits are simply like another one of these thematic audits, but this time you need a rider, and certainly have had wonderful times getting Sean to ride for us and getting him to report all his thoughts and film it. And you know, we have the advantage with Sean is he's actually a road safety auditor as well. He's doing his refresher course here, and just wonderful insights that you won't pick up unless you ride it. So you can have a think about that. I'm going to leave it there. I think that's been very good. We've got a lot covered because I want to just give enough time to really delve into telling you about your assignment. But do pop any questions in there now. While I'm here, I'll show you there's a motorcycle cam-friendly device. Well, one of the prototypes. So it's essentially kind of like a slip-based pole, but it's got some little extra elements in there and underneath. And yeah, just trying to find that exact force which is appropriate is the fun part, and then getting it all to work. And I tell you what, Australian standard on wind loads is astronomical in terms of how much force you've got to withstand. Anyway, we don't want more of those signs falling off the freeway, I suppose. Like, well, these aren't freeway lines, but that's what it's all thinking about. Time for you to do your mock audit. Let's go. Screen 2. Okay. Hopefully you're seeing screen 2. Yes, my computer says you are. Up into the chat if you're not. You're well, you know our learning management system well, got your resources all there. And we're down now into module 4. Okay, cyclists, motorcyclists, done, and road safety audit site visit. So you've got some extra little bits and pieces in there. I knew I'd run out of time on motorcyclists. I pre-videoed some case studies for you to watch. So please jump in there and watch them. Just some real world case studies, some information on thematic audits. You've got a quiz to do. Okay, no getting out of that. We're going to ask you to go out to a site. I'll show you your site soon, but we need you to be safe. We've risk assessed the sites to ensure that, that we're not putting you out to somewhere that's high risk. However, we need you to also play your part in ensuring that you're not going to go out there when you're intoxicated, and you're going to wear a high-vis vest, and you're going to act responsibly. And if you've got COVID, you're not going to go out there and, those sort of things. So what we've done is a safe work method statement. So you can have a read of that, and just, you're going to have to agree to it. So you have to go into this and you have to click, yep, I agree to following those things. And there's stuff in there. The stuff in there is really common sense stuff, but we do want to ensure that you're thinking about your safety, as well as we've thought about ensuring that each of these sites can be done safely. Okay. And that all is in, yeah, so complete all of that. Then we're going to complete your road safety audit. And there you go. You can see a whole lot of PDFs. Okay. As a Word document at the top, we'll come back to that. But each of these is a site. And it's a site near your house or your office or whatever address you gave us. So we've custom found or custom designed some upgrades to an area near your address that you gave us. So let's have a look here. I don't know what this one is, but somebody will be going there. There we go. Okay. So wherever this is, Truman's Road there, and Broadway, there is a proposed roundabout. Okay. And what we are asking you to do is do the road safety audit on that proposed roundabout, not on what's there at the moment. It's probably a T intersection at the moment, normal T intersection, doesn't have a roundabout. Okay. You're auditing the roundabout. Okay. And so that should be fairly easy for you to get to. Okay. And you're going to go out there and you're going to wear a high-vis vest and you're going to have a look at how does it operate now, and where are pedestrians going, and how is this new roundabout going to connect in, and as you're approaching along here, can you see everything you need to see? And now, is this going to be a danger for cyclists now? What about a cyclist coming through the year? We just did the bit on cyclists and roundabouts. So have they been thought about? How are we going to do that? Could it be done better? Is it going to be a danger? Lots of that sort of thinking. And so there'll be different ones out there, different designs, and people will have different things. Here's another one you can see. Some of them you pick two that have some pretty decent designs. Let's try and find one that has less information. There we go. There's a more conceptual idea. You're still able to audit these. You're just doing a more conceptual level where you're you might not have as much detail, but that they're building a roundabout there. And you're thinking about general issues that could arise when they build that, or things that haven't been considered. So you find your name there, and you can probably, see it now already. And you're going to go out to that site. Then you're going to use this road safety audit template to write up your audit findings. So the audit template, this is a proper audit template, okay? And so you can use this for future audits if you'd like, and you're welcome to rebrand it, change it, take it on as your own, okay? But what we've got here is all of this stuff, but all we want you to do is replace anything that's highlighted yellow. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff we don't want you to have to work on, and we're trying to keep it nice and easy for you. So it should be fairly obvious, okay? And you're going to put a little map in, fill out those bits, a little bit here and there, but it should help you if you're doing future audits. Use these things. We've worked on it to ensure it conforms with the 2022 version of the Austroads Guide. It's good practice unless you're doing an audit in New Zealand. But generally this is good. Or New South Wales, make sure you knock out the recommendations column. So if your drawing has a number on it, put it in there, and a designer. If it doesn't, just put none provided, and put your name there, road safety auditor in training, and you can put an employee if you want. You are not going out there at night. You do not go to the site at night. In a real audit, you would. Again, just risk assessment in the course and all of that. We've said we're not going to do that, but you can say where you went, when you went out on site. You're going to be using your usual risk matrix. It's got some more information in there. You can have a look at it, and then you can make some overarching comments if you want. And you're going to be signing it. And site photos. In terms of site photos, we don't want you to give us lots of site photos. Okay? You would in a real audit, you'd have lots of site photos. For this one, we just want a photo of you on site in your high-vis vest to prove to us that you actually went there. Because that's an important part of auditing, is to actually go to the site and get a feel for it. How does it operate? Now, we've put the audit findings now as the table. Now, you might elect not to have it as an appendix. Some people get angry as an appendix. We do that just so it's easy for a client to grab that part out specifically. Again, I'll put the example there to remind you, but you should be getting pretty good at this by now because you've been working on it. And you'll see here, 1, 2, 3 issues this time. Only 3 issues. You give us more than 3, we're not going to read them, so don't bother. 3 issues. Now, if you can't find 3 issues, get in contact. We'll give you a few hints and point you at a few things to think about. Most people don't have much trouble finding 3 issues. They might not be high-risk issues. They might be low-risk issues, but most people don't have too much trouble. So you're going to fill all of this out. You're going to read it, proofread it, and go, yep, happy with that. PDF it and upload it in where you add your submission as you're all used to, and you drop it in there. You have 2 weeks to do this. We do have a session next week, and that's a great opportunity to come with any questions you might have, and we can discuss those. If you've got it as a question, others probably will have it a question either now or when they're out doing audits in the future. So it's good to ask those and we can discuss them. But you do have a bit of time to do that. Of course, if you're struggling in any way, shape or form, get in contact. We can organise a one-on-one catch up. We can talk you through it, help you through those bits and pieces. You're going to get in the next day or two some feedback on your desktop, one of these, where you're getting a feel for how you write these up, and then you'll be out to do this final one. And this is really the final, big exercise you have to do to prove your competency in order for us to give you that certificate. You have 3 attempts at it. You will be given feedback if you don't meet that 80% benchmark, and you'll be able to resubmit and get up there to that. So hopefully that explains the task. If you if you do have somebody else that most of you look like it's a 1-person one. If you did happen to want to go out there with somebody else because there were 2 of you at the same site, we do accept that as long as both names are on both audit reports that are put in and the like, but I'm not sure that's going to happen for this group. If you look at that and you go, actually, that site is way more convenient for me than the one you've given me because I moved or I work from home and I gave you the work address, then just shoot an email through to Emma or myself even, and just say you'd prefer to change to the another one, and we're okay with that. Use the prompt list to help you think about things, find issues and the like, but otherwise enjoy it. It's a really exciting thing to undertake audits, in my opinion. You're trying to think about the future and what will happen and how road users will use it and what things could go wrong and the like, and you really, I don't know, you can really get into it. So I hope you enjoy it. Any final questions on that? Okay, I think you're all chomping at the bit to get into your audits and maybe your quiz there. So I'll leave you to it, but keep in contact. Are there graphs for motorcyclists regarding speed and severity? Sorry, Ken, I think I missed that. Came through earlier, and I should have answered. Yes, I have a great paper that was done by one of our colleagues in Sweden, UN Strandrop, and some others around the severity injury for motorcyclists. And I will pop them into the resource part of the learning management system shortly. Great question, though. Generally, a little bit higher than cyclists, lower than cars for all crash types is where, if you want just a general gauge at it. Yes, you're auditing only the proposed conditions. The reason you look at the current conditions is to see how the new design will tie into it, what new problems could happen, what's there that they're not going to get rid of that could be a danger. But you are looking at this as though it's, 3 years' time and it's all built and operating. What are the crashes? What are the issues? What are the dangers? Not what is currently there, unless it's going to remain and be an issue. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good luck with your auditing. Keep in contact.